Hello, my name is Gabriel Frieden. For young children, part of their cognitive and behavioral development is the development and determination of whether they will be right-handed, left-handed, mixed, or ambidextrous. This is often referred to as handedness. It still is yet to be determined whether this particular behavioral trait is a direct result of genetics, normal brain functioning, environment, or a combination of all of them. In fact, I have not found one piece of research willing to stand behind a solid theory of how handedness is determined. It is not my intention to determine exactly how handedness is determined either. Rather, I would like to discover whether or not the very minimum amount of controlled intentional environmental influences could influence the overall handedness in children. First of all, the experiment will be conducted here at Georgia, mainly due to the lack of funding for travel. Research has shown that ethnicity has no large impact on handedness. Therefore, ethnicity would not be a requirement nor a disqualifier for this experiment. This study would include equal amounts of both male and female participants. There would be 400 participants in total, two different groups of 200 each, 100 of those being male in each group and 100 being female in each group. The age band for this experiment is stages 2 to 4 of Jean Piaget's sensory-motor intelligence period. At the start of the experiment, they would have to be 2 months old. The experiment would conclude after the child reached the age of 1 year, at which time the final part of the experiment involving the child would be conducted. This is the most appropriate age group due to the fact that this is the time frame children begin and master grabbing and grasping things. As I already stated, ethnicity would not disqualify a child from the study. Something that would disqualify a child from this study would be a child who has some type of physical abnormality. This would have to be a disqualifying factor since it has the potential of becoming a variable that affects the rest of the experiment. With that being said, another disqualifying factor would be some type of mental abnormality. This would be a disqualifying factor for the same reason. Socioeconomic class, on the other hand, would not be a consideration for qualification or disqualification from this experiment. Some people may wonder if I would take into consideration the handedness of parents. The answer is no. The reason I wouldn't is because I haven't found enough sufficient evidence where I believe there is a strong enough variable to affect the overall results. While yes, genetics may play a part in deciding handedness in children, most research points more towards normal biological functioning between the brain and the body being the cause, and not so much genetics. In fact, some research proposes that genetics do not even play a role at all. Obviously, informed consent from the parents will be necessary. The way I would recruit the subjects would be through the local hospitals. I would ask the hospitals to pass out envelopes. Inside the envelopes would be the details of the experiment, a questionnaire, a consent form, and a self-addressed stamped envelope would be enclosed as well. These would be specifically passed out to parents who just had a baby and prior to them taking that first trip home from the hospital. The included short questionnaire would be used to determine the demographics of the child, if there were any disqualifications, and contact information if chosen for the experiment. If they chose to participate in the experiment, they could fill out the questionnaire, sign the consent form, place both in the self-addressed stamped envelope, and place it in the mail. There would be no money awarded for participation. Participation would have to be based on pure self-interest or an interest in furthering science. I understand because of this, it would probably require a lengthy process of retrieving enough participants for the experiment, but time is not an issue. In addition to the original consent form, there would be another consent form that would need to be signed prior to the gathering of the data following the child's first birthday. This would allow parents who have changed their minds after a year's time to back out on data being gathered on their child. When collecting data, I would include all willing participants until I had enough data gathered for each of the samples to be complete. Any additional participants' results would not be included in the final evaluation. For example, once I had gathered the final data on 100 females from the control group, I would no longer include data from other females in the control group, but would include the results for all of the samples that still remained incomplete. Basically, it would have a first-come, first-served type of error to it. My hypothesis for this experiment has two parts. First, I hypothesize that the control group will display characteristics that reflect the current world average. The current world average involving handedness is approximately 85 to 90% of the population being right-handed. With the sample size being fairly small, I would allow for a max error of 5%. Second, I hypothesize that the experimental group will display a significant difference of at least 15% from the current average handedness. This would mean a maximum of 70% of the experimental group will be right-handed, or at least 30% of the experimental group will be something other than right-handed. This experiment itself is relatively simple, but the parents of the experimental group will have their work cut out for them. The control group doesn't really do anything out of the ordinary. They carry on with their lives just as they normally would. And then after their child's first birthday, the child will be observed for an 8-hour period by myself or someone conducting the experiment with me. They would be observed for that 8-hour period to determine what handedness they have developed. These results would be consolidated for the control group, and the percentages of each type of handedness would be calculated for the group. For the experimental group, it would be completely different. The parents for this group would be instructed that once their child turned 2 months old, that for 6 5-minute periods a day, using their left hand, they needed to hand objects to their child, and also attempt to hand those objects to the left hand of the child. The 6 5-minute periods would have to be separated by at least 10 minutes between each period. Each of these periods would also need to be documented in a journal provided to them. Bi-weekly, they would be required to either mail or email their documentation. If they failed to do this, their child's data would not be included in the final collection and evaluation. They would also be instructed to never force the child's left hand to take something. Again, the purpose of the experiment is to create a significant change with only a small amount of environmental influence. The parents would also be instructed that in no way are they to reward the child for taking an object with their left hand or punish for taking an object with their right hand. With consent, the parents would receive a phone call, text message, and email daily as a reminder to their participation in the experiment. This would be terminated upon their request. This termination, though, would also have the same effect as not submitting the journal entries bi-weekly. I'm fully aware of how long it might take to fulfill the required numbers for the experimental group because of different specific criteria, but these things are all necessary to ensure that the experiment is being carried out correctly without actually being in each one of these families' homes to carry out the experiment myself. Just the same as the control group, after a child's first birthday in the experimental group, the child would be observed for an 8-hour period to determine what handedness they have developed. These results would be consolidated for the entire group, and the percentages of each type of handedness would be calculated for the group. Once the experiment and all calculations were complete, the results would be compared to my hypothesis. At that point in time, I'd be able to determine whether or not a very minimal amount of controlled intentional environmental influences could influence the overall handedness in children. If the results suggested I'm correct that they are able to influence handedness, then in my opinion this would be mainly attributed to repetition and mirroring. Repetition coming from them being handed to their left hand so many times, and the mirroring from seeing the parents actually handing them stuff with their left hand. The mirroring would actually continually play a larger role as the experiment continued on due to the lack of developed eyesight at the age of 2 months. If the results suggest I am incorrect, I may need to adjust the variables or approach handedness in a completely different direction. This concludes the video, and thank you for watching and listening.